We are expecting a defeat in Parliament for Theresa May. How is Brussels preparing for that?
Well, indeed, there's a few case scenarios. I suppose there's the no-deal Brexit, which we heard about just before Christmas, which will be just the bare bones of plans to mitigate the worst causes of the UK crashing out of the EU. Of course, nobody wants that. Now, I've been speaking to sources over the past few hours and late last night, and they're looking at a couple of options. It depends on, first of all, the nature of the defeat. If it's a very small margin, then Theresa May could come back to Brussels and maybe negotiate, quote, a softer Brexit, but it wouldn't be much more different than what's in the withdrawal agreement. And then there's an open-mindedness to, of course, explore the idea of extending Article 50 in order to allow for a second referendum or a general election. Those two things have to be requested for Theresa May, and it depends on what happens this evening. But what I do know is that if she requested an extension of Article 50 in order to, quote, muddle along and continue to kick the can down the road and to continue to aimlessly push this deal, then there wouldn't be as much of an open mind from member states in this regard.
And Shona, is there a sense that Brussels could have done more to help the British Prime Minister get her deal through Parliament, perhaps by offering concessions, for example?
Well, indeed, this is one of the questions that's been asked for the past, since I suppose the publication of the withdrawal agreement in November, and maybe historically we'll look back and ask this question too. But when you say it to officials and diplomats from member states, they look at a few things. They look at the fact that Article 50 was triggered in the first place without the UK having a plan of what kind of Brexit it wanted. Then there was the implementation of red lines, leaving the customs union, leaving the single market, and having to take into account the Good Friday Agreement, which created a lot more complications. You also had the people like the DUP demanding that the Northern Ireland isn't set apart from the rest of the UK. So it was all incredibly technical all along. Then they would look at the fact that the UK at the last minute requested a UK-wide customs union when many member states, including France in particular, didn't want that because they thought it looked like the EU accessing the single market through the back door. So the EU would look at this and say, well, we did what we could to maintain our red lines, protect the integrity of the single market and to protect the constitutional integrity of the UK. And they'd also look to the fact that yesterday, when you look at the assurances that were given through Theresa May, while they weren't legally binding, they went as far as they could to say they were of a legal nature and that they would endeavour to create a long-lasting trade agreement with the UK that would protect everyone's red lines. And they would say they've gone as far as they can in that regard.